The game series that typically comes to mind when Halloween comes around is none other than Castlevania. Created and developed by Konami, it was hailed as one of the most critically acclaimed and also best-selling franchises of all time. And it's not hard to see why. I fondly remember playing the game as a kid and would always associate it with Halloween, or when it was the end of autumn or the start of winter. Oddly enough, must have been the feel, I guess. The series debuted in Japan back in 1986 on the Famicom as Demon Castle Dracula, but 1987 gathered the game much recognition internationally when it was released on the NES as Castlevania. Earlier Castlevania games, especially the NES ones, were heavily inspired by classic horror films. Bosses were based on famous Universal and Hammer monsters such as Frankenstein's monster and the Mummy. You will also notice that the title screens were also presented in a film reel style, with the ending of the first NES episode delivered in movie credits fashion. Konami tried to remove such obvious references in subsequent titles, but their charm somewhat remained with certain dungeon bosses. The Castlevania series is a sprawling historical fantasy that records the eternal battle with Dracula. Most of the games follow the adventures of the Bellman family of vampire hunters, passing down the vampire killer whip from generation to generation. They defeat Dracula every time he's resurrected by the forces of evil. Throughout history, a mysterious castle appears somewhere in the world, and it's up to someone to put a stop to it. The first game in the series and the original Castlevania was a typical platform game, where you controlled the game's protagonist Simon Bellman, a descendant of the Bellman clan. He ventures inside Castlevania, the demon-infested castle ruled by none other than Count Dracula. After making your way through the castle to the top, you'd be sure to face the final battle. See, Bellman can only slay the evil Count Dracula using the family's relic, which was passed down from generation to generation, a relic which was blessed with the power to destroy vampires and other creatures of the night. The sequel released the same year, titled Castlevania II: Simon's Quest, and offered an extensive map with areas and shops players could repeatedly revisit in the quest to assemble the body parts of Dracula. While mechanics pale in comparison to the games of today, Simon's Quest was one of the earlier console titles to provide open-world exploration. The third NES episode of the Castlevania video game series reverted to the format of the first game, with an increase in the number of stages and the addition of multiple routes. Dracula's Curse was also the debut for Alucard, immortal son of Dracula, who would go on to become one of the series' most beloved characters. 1997's Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation remains the most critically acclaimed episode of the series. The masterpiece is renowned for using Alucard instead of Bellman as the protagonist. It is also famous for revamping Castlevania's gameplay, which was a combination of Metroid and Castlevania. This format emphasizes non-linear exploration and RPG-style powering up, where the player was allowed to roam free in the game's environment, but only allowed to access a small number of areas at first. The rest of the areas would only be reached by doing certain tasks, such as finding objects or finishing a boss fight, which would then give the player new abilities to access these new areas. Between 1999 and 2005, Konami released 4 Castlevania episodes featuring 3D gameplay, but unfortunately all 4 received a lukewarm response from players, with the most common complaint being monotonous and repetitive environments. Possibly because of this, Konami did not attempt any further 3D entries until 2010's Lords of Shadow, a reboot which takes place in 1047 and tells the story of Gabriel Bellman, the Brotherhood of Light warrior sent to investigate that darkness that killed his wife. His actions and eventual sacrifice would then see the rise of darkness that would become prevalent in the series. A direct sequel, Lords of Shadow: Mirror of Fate, reveals the story of Bellmans as they battle destiny across generations to discover their true fate. Trevor Bellman, Knight of the Brotherhood of Light, embarks on an epic quest to avenge his mother who was killed by his father Gabriel, now known as Dracula. The game concludes with a tragic showdown between father and son. Lords of Shadow 2 takes place directly after the events of Mirror of Fate and follows Gabriel Bellman, aka Dracula, as he awakens from a deep slumber. He heads out on a journey to reclaim his powers, but the Bellman clan is looking to dispose of him before he reclaims all of his abilities once again. It might be hard to believe, but for over 32 years, millions of players have committed home invasions in order to murder the Lord of Darkness. Since its 1986 debut, Castlevania has haunted fans with its historic gothic setting, multi-genre soundtrack, and memorable antagonists. We have much respect for the initial series on the NES, SNES and the Master System, aka Genesis, but will always hail Castlevania Symphony of the Night as the title that revolutionized the series, which ushered in a genre known as Metroidvania. Though instead of exploring a desolate alien world, players would explore a lavishly detailed castle, coupled with hundreds of items, weapons, secrets and a gorgeous soundtrack. We rate Symphony of the Night as one of the best games of all time. This retro rewind is a proud dedication to the iconic series Castlevania, which meant a lot to us and to many gamers out there.